Welcome, everyone, to It's Time to Excel, where we inspire and we ignite the possibilities that are all around us. And I am just so grateful today to have my friend Teri Roderick. I don't even know how to pronounce your last name correctly, but Terry, I'll let you pronounce it here in a second, to join me today because we were talking and we have businesses that are fairly similar, but at the same time so different, and we have been able to work together, and I'm just so blessed and honored to be able to have that opportunity with you, and I'm so grateful you took the time to join us today. So Terry, why don't you introduce yourself, pronounce your name properly so that I don't mess it up totally, and tell the folks a little bit about you.
Okay, I am Teri Rogowski. I am a daily money manager currently, and that stems from being a financial advisor for 3 decades and retiring from that line of corporate work and launching my own business as a daily money manager. I help people with their daily finances. I'm the Janet person for individuals
Yeah.
rather than businesses. So that's how we kind of complement each other.
We do. And that has been such a good, we both use QuickBooks and we both are helping folks to manage and get their arms around their money because it's so important. And whether it's business or personal, and we were just talking a little bit beforehand, and how often do those two mirror each other or not mirror? Would you mind sharing just a little bit about what you were saying? Because it was an interesting concept, and how often, especially as business owners, we fall into that trap.
I had a friend I had coffee with the other day, and she mentioned that she'd like to work with me personally. We had a business client together, and she'd like to work with me personally to get a handle on her own personal money. She said, I make a lot of money, but it seems to disappear.
Disappear.
I think, and I went through that for many, many years on my own. I could help other people, but wasn't really keeping track of my own. So, what I said to her is, I can help you, and I'm sure you know this. You talk about this too, Janet. Is we can do the science part of putting the numbers together, and here's a spreadsheet, and here's where. But it's a mindset of getting your arms around the behavior to be
Mhm.
able to be realistic and know where your money's going.
Exactly. And you've got to have that foundation in place. And that's kind of what we're talking about, whether it's business or it's personal. We've got to have a system in place. I mean, I'm always harping on a system, but that system, what's best for you, is always the same answer. It's the one you're going to use. So that goes right into the mindset. You've got to use it. If you're not going to use it, it's no good to either one of us. And we can't help you. We can't guide you. We have nothing to work with. And I
Right.
think that's what makes it so important is once you get your arms around the money, now you have a choice.
Yeah.
What are you going to do about
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
What are you going to do about it? And how often do we find out? We don't even realize how often we go out for coffee. When we used to go out and coffee, it's coming back now. How often do we go out for lunch? Oh, wait, I didn't realize because it's just a couple of bucks here or there. How many times do you run through Starbucks? $5 here, $5 here, five. That adds up really, really quickly. And I think so often we don't even realize it. And on the personal side, I'm going to bet we were kind of talking and joking a little bit about how often kids end up scarfing a lot of that money, just and it just disappears right into their fingers and right out their fingers
Yeah.
as they're going.
In many cases, what I have found, myself included, is, we want to help our children, and sometimes it's detrimental to our own well-being. I think, I've learned that our children need to learn how to make the mistakes with money, and, have to be accountable for it.
Hmm.
And if I'm constantly bailing them out and, allowing them to buy the things that they think are important, then, I'm teaching them the bad habits that I had once had.
And it's easy enough to do. It is so easy to do, but it's amazing how things, but then we're going right back to that foundation. What system do you have in place to track this? And part of it too, I think, even as a financial advisor, you plan for that. Would you not agree with that? You can plan for the fun money. You can plan for the kid money. You can plan for that
Yeah.
becomes part of your budget.
And I never tell people to, stop buying Starbucks or stop doing the things
Yeah,
that you love to do. You can still do those things, but let's figure out where we're going to take from so that we don't overtake. Uh,
exactly. And
and,
know
and
where those numbers are coming from.
yeah, me personally, I made good money, was single, and my money went to take care of me, and I didn't think a whole lot about it. I stopped balancing checkbooks years ago because there was always enough. And then I thought, well, I'm going to retire and launch this business. I better know like where my money is because it's not going to be,
Helpful.
coming in all the time. So I personally used a program that many people are familiar with, Mint, because it's free and it was
Mhm.
fairly easy. A little bit difficult to set up, but if you find trouble with that, someone like me or Janet can help you set it up. Um, and I, discovered that, yeah, my Nordstrom's, coffee and shopping and Starbucks and, the dining out is where a lot of my money was going. So just having an awareness, I think, was really
Mhm.
important for me.
And what have you found on the personal side? Because I hear a lot of times with clients, they're like, well, it's just too much work. It's just too much. It's too complicated. And
Mhm.
that's always been one thing that I already like. I kind of argue back. I'm like, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be complicated. So
Yeah,
on the personal side, share a little bit there.
yeah, I think you don't have to account for every penny. Put broad categories, and
That's negotiable.
we'll talk
Kidding.
about that at the end, but I wrote a book last year and I talk about that. Use these broad categories, whether it's house, car, medical, and and travel. But don't have to account for every penny and set up these categories. Or hire someone like me or Janet to just get it started because Mint and Quicken and QuickBooks, they get pretty smart pretty quickly.
Mhm.
Um, they know, in fact, I have a funny story. Um, they start, once you categorize something, it kind of picks it up the next time. So,
Right, wrong,
one,
or indifferent.
yeah, one time I was at Nordstrom and bought coffee, and so I put the category coffee. And then the next month, when I looked at my Mint statement, it showed that I'd spent, like $500 on coffee, and I'm like, well, anything at Nordstrom, they
It's
categorize
coffee.
coffee.
One of the biggest nightmares, these tools are fabulous when they work the way you think they're going to work.
Yeah,
We were running into one. I was with a business owner, and one of the tricks, and I hadn't even thought about it, but it made sense when we were talking about it, was the excluded option. And here it was what she had just come on board. So it was before we had broken apart the personal and the business accounts, because I'm a really big firm believer. You guys know, you hear me mantra on that one. Business and personal needs to be separate. End of
yeah,
story.
yeah, yeah,
End of story. But what was happening is, so starting out, sometimes that's not the case. So she had a credit card, which we were finishing up, but we were catching up the beginning of 2022, and we were looking at it. We're like, okay, and I couldn't find the chart. I'm trying to reconcile it. I can't find the chart. I'm like, how in the world did we miss? I'm the one that brought this stuff in. Where is this stuff at?
yeah,
Here, in her mind, it was excluding meant that was personal.
right.
In QuickBooks mind, excluded meant, oh, we don't need this anymore. Well, yes, you do. It hit the card. So it was a terminology slash system misunderstanding, and those misunderstandings, just like QuickBooks, just like Excel, just like any software tool that you want to use, it tries to help you.
Yes,
It may or may not be helping you. And yeah, it's funny at the time. Because you could figure out you probably didn't spend $500 in coffee unless you're drinking coffee morning, noon, and night.
right, right.
However, when you're looking at these business expenses, that happens so often. And I run into clients who are like, oh, they just trust. I'm like, no, no, you do not trust this. You look. There's a reason you have a chance to review it before you say, okay,
Yeah.
please do. So it's little things like that, I think, that cause some grief. So there are definitely some things that they can do, especially on the personal side. I mean, I think that's one of the things that gets dropped back. They mirror each other, business and personal. Your habits, your way of doing it, the way tracking, the whole 9 yards, they mirror one another. So let's build some good habits. So what are some good habits that they can start building in on the personal side that you've seen?
Um, Look over your bank statements and your credit card statements. Just kind of glance at those. You don't have to add everything up. But if you just take a look at those and just I think, awareness is so important as a foundation. Just be aware. Don't don't do like I did years ago and sweep it under the rug because it really,
Yeah,
again,
eventually.
well, if I don't see a bill or I don't open it, it's not really there. Um,
Right.
that's
It's
not
not being auto deducted from my account every
Yeah,
single month.
yeah. So, have some awareness, and that will make you feel more in control. No matter how much you hate it, just look over and your statements and make sure that you understand what's being charged.
Hmm.
And then we can take the next step and say,
Right.
what do we want to change?
Exactly. And you just said you got to start where you're at. And I think that's exactly what you're saying. Don't
Exactly.
be so overwhelmed that you just don't do nothing, because the confused mind does do nothing. That is not going to help us in any fashion at this point. But where can we start? Well, you're going to start where you're at.
Yep.
So just by getting one, get the awareness. Get that
Yep.
awareness of what are you doing, so that you realize that, okay, I probably need to get a little better handle on this, because it'll just disappear. It's always saying, like that budget is, you're just planning to tell your money where it's going to go instead of wondering where it went. I mean, I use that quote from Dave Ramsey. I'm sure you have as well. Don't wonder where it went.
Yes.
Grab a
Yes.
hold of it, tell it where to go, which is exactly what you were saying. Get those categories. If you need to start with the old envelope system, I did that when we always used cash. It was a lot easier. So,
Yeah.
and that's exactly what you were saying. It wasn't accounting for every penny, but you are, in essence, because you allocated $200 to groceries, you added $100 to the utility bill, you added one, and these were all different envelopes, which is exactly what you're saying. We're just in a virtual world now. So how do we make this virtual? And that's a challenge.
And I think sometimes starting where you are, maybe take one step backwards and say, let's do a guesstimate of how much we spend on groceries. I did that when I was teaching a class one time, and that was very interesting. We did kind of little small groups, and said, hey, let's kind of take a guess. How much do you spend on your cell phone? How much do you spend for dining out? And then it kind of became a game as to
Yep.
how close was I?
That's actually really interesting. And I think you don't even realize it, because it's like my phone bill comes automatically out of my budget. Like,
Mm-hmm.
not in my budget, it comes right out of my account. It's on auto pay.
Right.
And then you don't have to worry about it. Oh, that's convenient. Yes, it's convenient, but you better know what's going out.
Yeah.
Like, and I usually can tell, I know how much needs to be in that checking account at every, like I may not know the exact amount, but I know a general idea. And if something's
Yeah.
off, I'm like, hey, what happened? And that's before I even look at the numbers.
Right.
And I don't look all the time at the bank, because I don't rely on my bank account. And I think that's another one. Don't use your bank account as the decision of whether or not you can buy something. I hear that a lot, and that's on personal side too. I have so many clients that they look at their phone, they look at their balance. Oh, yes, I can buy that today.
Yeah.
No. Do you run into that on the personal side as well?
Yeah, a lot of people just don't. It's the old saying. Well, if my bank says, or my checkbook says I have money, then I must. But that's not always true.
Yeah, at least today, but tomorrow, when all the bills hit that you've written out.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think that's one of the biggest challenges. And that's why I really encourage folks, like the system, like we set up in QuickBooks for the business side. I mean, I don't want to wait until after the check clears the bank for you to tell me you wrote the check. That is the wrong way to do this.
yeah,
That check number should already been in the system
yes, yeah,
waiting
yeah,
to clear the bank, which means you're going to have a difference. So on the first screen in QuickBooks, one things I like about it is that it says, here's your bank balance, here's your QuickBooks balance. Why don't they match?
yeah,
Well, they should, because the only thing that should be out is an outstanding check
yep.
or a pending transaction. If it's not in that category, you got a problem. And we can chase that problem really, really quickly. And I think it's probably very similar on the personal side as well.
It is. Yeah, just again, and knowing where. So I do a couple of things. When I first start working with a client, I said I want to see all your bank statements and your
Mm-hmm.
credit card statements, because I want to know where is the money coming from and where is it, what accounts at least are they going into, and then how are they being spent. So those, I think I have come across, now I work with many elderly people, but I have come across a few people that are missing money, like some payments have stopped or they move and forget to tell people. And so I have found some lost money. That's always fun for people.
Okay. Well,
So
that's really, really interesting
I'll
that
probably,
that is the case.
yeah,
And
I'll do
that's
a
true.
full
That
vlog on that sometime. Yeah.
Absolutely. I had, and that happens. I always use the opposite side on these automated credit cards. I'm always referring to that more so because in the business side, you usually know where your revenue's coming from,
Uh-huh.
but there's those auto expenses, but it's the same concept on the personal side, but on the income. And you're right, for the elder, especially in the elder, that is a lot of your clientele that you are working with because that's the one area they don't know. And how often is it, especially with the females, a lot of times they never handle the bills. They don't even know, they really weren't, depending on what generation they were in, that wasn't what they did. In
Right.
fact, they were kept out of it most of the time, and yet they're outliving their spouse, and that's a challenge.
Absolutely. That's, the majority of my clients are females in those situations. But I did have one recently that it was the female that took care of the finances in the family, um,
Okay.
the household finances, and that happens a lot. The male took care of the bigger things, the investments and the
Hmm.
auto repairs. And she ended up in memory care. Now I don't know how long that was going on at home before she went into memory care, but
Okay.
he was not aware of some things that were going on financially. So one of the issues was her pension had stopped and her social
Oh
security
no.
because they didn't notify the address change.
Oh no.
And so I was able to help him because she could no longer communicate. I was able to help him get paid back a year in pensions and 2 years in Social Security.
Wow.
But he had no idea that that wasn't his thing to do. Yeah,
Well, and I think that's the hard part. You've got to have that system in place so that someone can help you.
that's the
And I
second.
think that's key.
Yeah, that's the second thing. And whether it's business, you and I should do something on another topic. Is
Yes.
your keys to your castle. Make sure that someone knows where your personal and your business finances are.
Is there any tips you have on that one just to kind of as we're thinking about that? Because key, I mean, that's definitely a whole nother subject, but is there something that they can do right now today that would help
Well, in
them?
my book, there's a link to a checklist that is free for everybody that gives you kind of things that you might not think of to make sure that you write down somewhere and tell someone where that piece of paper is.
And they can find that link to your book on your website, right?
Yeah, they can.
So there's their website. It's
Yeah,
day-to-day-personal-financial.com. And take advantage of that. It's a great book. I've had the pleasure of being able to read it, so I appreciate that. And it's really starting to make you think about stuff. And I think that's the key. It's
yeah.
making you think.
Make
But
sure
that checklist is great.
make sure somebody knows how to open your phone. What is the password to your email? How to open your computer, and you don't have to share that out loud, but you can write it down, and
Put
then
it in a binder
let
or
your
somewhere.
let someone know where you have that. And the same thing with your business. What's the password to get into your QuickBooks account?
Yeah, that can really cause some grief when you don't have these passwords and stuff because everything is password related now.
Yeah,
Everything.
yeah. And
Now, do
with
you
password
use
man,
it? And a lot of those, I mean, my mom would be like, yeah, there's no way I'm going to put my passwords on the computer. And it
yeah,
would be, but can we write them down
yeah,
and hide them in a binder somewhere and tuck it in a corner?
yeah, and not under your keyboard.
Yeah, or on your monitor, which I have
Yeah.
seen so many times.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Little sticky note with the password up there. Yeah.
No, we don't do that. We've got to at least encrypt it slightly more than that as we're going. But that does happen so often. So, I mean, I know we have a lot of, I've talked a little bit about, I've now converted over to LastPass just because I've had so many passwords. Now, I'm
Yeah,
still a little old school because I do have the backup copy on, paper form tucked in a corner. I just can't let go.
I do too. Yeah.
Like I know I give them all my secrets, but at the same time, but you've got to get them written down somewhere, whether or not it's paper, whether or not it's electronic, whether it's a combo of both. And then let the people that are going to help you know where it's at.
Right. And
I probably need a little bit better on that one because my poor husband's going to be in so much trouble.
I
I'm
had
like, call the bank, shut the account down because I got money flying everywhere.
and I did have a woman that her husband passed away suddenly, and she had no idea of his phone password, how to open his computer, and he
Oh
did
my.
everything online. So
Oh, yeah.
it was quite cost quite a bit of money and time, and some missed bill,
I
missed
think one of the
bill.
other things too, especially on the personal side, when I was working with dad and trying to figure out, because mom, it was a challenge with them because they never really included me in a lot of that stuff
Mm,
until it got to a point where it was becoming an issue.
right.
And then, trying to collect everything when mom had her issues and then trying to convince dad, like, where is everything? Where have you put it? Where are your insurance policies? What are your insurance policies? What bank accounts do you have?
Exactly.
I was fortunate enough, if you want to call it that, that I was able to work with my parents while they were still alive a little bit and was able to but it took me years to get that all really put together with that generation. And I
Yeah.
was grateful finally that they gave me power of attorney that I could work with that. But it was a challenge because, like, I need to know what are the insurance policies? Is there any? They thought they had some, they weren't. Like they had been termed. Like it was just all this craziness. I spent hours upon hours trying to figure all of that out. So that might be as not something I'm betting on your checklist that is there.
It
Get that
is.
information down.
Yeah.
Account
Just
numbers, phone
y-
numbers, anything.
yes. And again, you don't have to share that, but tell someone where that piece of paper is. Keep it in
Yeah,
a sealed envelope. Look at it every New Year's Day or Mother's Day or your
take a
birthday,
day.
day of the year. Look at it and make sure that everything is still the correct date.
Accurate.
Yeah, accurate. Yeah.
I think that's another big one too. We were talking about how often is beneficiaries. How often do you update your beneficiaries?
Mm, yeah.
Is your, like that's one of the common things that I hear a lot of times thinking about, like if you're talking about that and all of a sudden if it's a divorce situation, did you ever update those insurance policies that you forgot you had?
Mhm.
And
Yeah. We've seen
little
that.
things like that. I bet you ran into that once or twice.
Yeah. Yeah. Quite a few times. Yeah.
So these are the types of things that we really want to encourage our folks. And as I said, it's personal or it's business. It really doesn't matter. The same holds true on both. The foundations are identical. What can we do to make things easier? And even in your business world, same kind of concept. Do you have somewhere that someone can fill in if you get sick, if you have to
Yeah.
step back, if you have to take care of an emergency? Do you have someone that is there to assist you?
Or can at least call your clients and
Bingo.
do they know where the phone numbers are for your clients?
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, that's huge. I mean, and it can happen. And even on mine, and that's a good valid point for me too, being on my own here, and just now starting to branch out and get that is something that I need to make sure someone is a little more familiar with on what is my system? How are we doing this? What can we do? How can we get to these folks to let them know and say, hey, we've got to work, something get delayed. How do they contact them?
And I know that both you and I run into people that love what they do, love where they are in life, but they don't want to be bothered. All this, the math sounds so overwhelming and so
Yeah.
costly. Yeah,
Then let us help you because we could be that person in some of the ways
exactly, exactly.
where the contacts are there.
I can set up a personal system. You can set up a business system that we can check in, you know, every couple months or every month and make sure you're still on track. Yeah.
And that makes such a big difference. It makes such a difference. So thinking about that as people are watching and kind of thinking about, okay, how can we get our arms around our money? There are some simple things we can do. One is communication. I mean, I think that's where it kind of boils down to is how can we communicate what's going on? Day to day, there we go. I'm going to put it back up there, day-to-day-personalfinancial.com. Go grab that checklist that is there. Take full advantage of it because that's what we're talking about here. Think about what you're not thinking about is we don't know what we don't know. I use that quite a bit. And I think that's what it is. We probably know this, but
Yeah.
we don't think about it. And
Yeah.
you have organized that for us so that we can kind of say, and it is day to day.
Yeah.
How are we going to take care of this day to day? How can we make this all work so that you're not stressed? So if an illness is coming through, or maybe you need to take care of a family member, take some of that burden off and get those systems in place so that you know exactly what's going on. And simple little things like checklists are huge. But
Yeah.
what do you got to put on the checklist? What do you got to do? What do you got?
Yeah.
It takes time. I can assure you, it takes a lot of time. I know how much time I spent with mom and dad trying to find stuff. And then I had a binder like that I like held tight to because I'm like, this is where everything's at.
Yeah. And
And
it goes for almost everything. I like to create a binder for people. Who do you call when you need the plumber? Who do you call to get your car repaired? When do you go in? Because all those things are important for someone that is not typically handling that now.
Hmm.
Couples end up, having roles in the family of the
Sure.
things that they enjoy doing.
Yeah.
Um, and don't even think of, don't think twice about trying to share that with someone. It just gets done.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And that should be the case. I mean, especially in a marriage, like you take your strengths, you utilize the strengths of the
Yeah,
other, and that makes a lot of sense. Flip side being, at least make them aware. At least make them know. So find some location and share that location. As you said, whether it's a sealed envelope with the passwords in it,
yes,
the benefit, whatever, it doesn't matter. Stick it somewhere and then let a trusted person know where that is at and
absolutely.
be thinking about that. And that's it. So, what are any other last minute tips that you can think of as we are getting ready to wind down? Can you believe we've been talking? It is time to excel. We want you guys to excel because there is
Yeah,
so many possibilities out there, and that's why I'm just so grateful you're willing to share time. And I do hear I've heard some different topics that we're going to have to come back to
yeah,
and see what we can do and really dive into it because I think keys to the castle is an absolute. That's one that we really need to explore. I think a little bit further and really nail down. And I know you have a great conversation on that, as well as some additional tools and techniques on that you personally do in your business as well.
yeah. Yeah, and I think one of my tips is you can do this. You can do this. I know it sounds overwhelming, but whatever we do, we're going to start with little baby steps. You can do this.
And that's great. I mean, you got to start where you're at, just like you said earlier. Start where you're at. Make an awareness first. Find the bank statements. Step one,
Yes, yes. And you might have to
and
print it off if it's online. Um,
that's okay. That's okay. Get it somewhere that you know, but you've got to start. You got to build a foundation, and that's what this whole thing is about: is building that foundation, so that when craziness comes, when chaos comes, it's not if, it's when. It's gonna come, whether we like it or not. How often does the brakes go out in the car and the washing machine die in the same week?
Absolutely, yeah.
There's gremlins every which way, and that it's going to happen. So plan for that, and that's something that I encourage, and I know that you do as well on the personal side. You know it's coming, so start adjusting for it now while you're not stressed out. I know in my line I talk about, I'm going to need a computer in a couple of years because I'm going to max it out. Guess what? That's a budget line item in mind all the time, whether or not I'm paying off a computer or putting back for a computer. But that's what I need to run my business effectively.
Yeah.
Same kind of a thing. And think about on your personal side, what you probably need a car. If you have a car, you're going to have maintenance on a car. If you have a
Hmm.
home, you're going to have maintenance on a home.
Right.
And typically, when one appliance goes, three more go with it. It's just a fact of life.
And I've had so many people over the years say, I want to retire. Help me with a plan. Okay, one of the first questions I say is, so what do you spend now?
I don't
What you
know.
get for now, what do you spend?
I have no
Because it's
idea.
very different in retirement.
Yeah. And what makes sense? And look at as I said, I know we just replaced what, a furnace and one other big
Yeah,
item. Oh, the dishwasher. Like, okay.
yeah,
But it never goes when you expect them, like it is what it is. But if you're planning for stuff like that, then it's not quite as big of a hit. It's not as stressful. It's
absolutely.
just part of the system. It's part of the system.
Yeah.
And
And if
that
you're
is,
out using credit cards, even better.
there you go. Yeah, sometimes personal limit that. I mean, I don't play the credit card game. I've never played it. Now, I mean, in business, I've had some business loans that I've had to, work through to kind of get things moving forward. But that's business is slightly different, but it's a controlled debt, not an uncontrolled debt. And even in your own personal world too, credit cards to me are debit cards in disguise. They just have a little D and C. Yeah. But that's how I've always treated it. Is it's basically a debit card. I don't put money on that card unless I know I have the money in the bank to cover it.
Well, I've made that mistake. So for many
Aha.
years. So
Okay.
I know how difficult it is to change that mindset and get on the other side of debt.
That's huge. That's huge. So if you don't go there, if you can help it, learn, and let us inspire you
Yes.
to not go there. and really get a handle on it. Get a handle on it now, whether it's your business or your personal, get a handle on it. And we will be back in touch with the keys to the castle because I think we can have some fun with that one as well. But we wanted to, as I said, just inspire and ignite the possibilities. We wanted you to start thinking about things that you hadn't think because there's so many things. And what can you, there's so many ducks out there. So we want to get our ducks in a row. And
Absolutely.
that has been the concept of this whole entire thing. What ducks can we get in a row? And that is figuring out what's duck number one, making sure you know where you're at, that awareness.
Awareness, that's key. Yeah.
Wherever you're at, wherever you're at. And one of those other ducks, some of the tips and tools that you suggested, grab that binder, whether it is a binder, physically a binder, whether it's a location on the computer, how do you get into that computer, what password? Those types of things are huge. And I do want to remind you guys, take advantage of that checklist because that's how you're going to get your ducks in a row. You're going
And
to get
it's in
those
the
ducks.
book. So the
Oh, the
book.
book. I'm sorry. Yep. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You got to get the book.
Yeah.
See, because I have it, I wasn't thinking. I'm like, I already took the book. I already took advantage of it. So, yeah, take full advantage of that and take advantage of the book as well. You can find all this information over on daydaypersonalfinancial.com. After all, it definitely is time to excel. So,
Yeah.
thank you, Teri. Thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to it happening again in the very near future as we start figuring out some other topics that will be useful for our folks here and to help them to excel.
And again, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Take care, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you here next week because we are here Wednesdays at 11:30 each and every Wednesday. Have a good one, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.